at the time I was mixing, the modern Brazilian music, bossa nova, Milton Nascimentos, and Jobims, and with American soul music, and then all the time as a songwriter, I was trying to show the people how my song could sound in American black singers.
Okay.
And all the time,
I
tried to imitate them, and I could not. So the sound that was appearing was totally, for the listeners, was totally different, was a unique thing.
Those are words of wisdom from a man who I've considered to be my creative mentor for the last 15 years. If it were not for him and his music, I would not be a writer. Few people in my life have had such an impact on me, and I want to spend some time talking about it because if you understand this, then you understand me and my work on a deeper level. This man's name, by the way, is Ivan Lins, and he's a Brazilian singer, composer, and musician. I'm Michael Laron, and this is the Writer's Journey podcast, where you get a window into the life of a working science fiction and fantasy author. I'm on a mission to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I share my progress and discover what inspires my books and how I write them. You can find the show notes for today's episode at michaellaron.com/podcast. This week, I'm talking about the writing life. Hello and welcome to episode 9. I wanted to spend this episode talking about an incredible influence on my creative career. I debated even doing this episode because I will guess that most people listening to this podcast have never heard of Ivan Lins. So to keep this interesting, I'm going to tell this story in a way that you might not expect. The year was 2003, and I was a freshman in high school. I was studying music, and around this time, writing wasn't even on my radar. I wanted to know about every style of music. I wanted to listen to everything, deconstruct it, and learn how to write it. I found a list of musical genres on the internet, and I made it a personal goal to spend 2 or 3 days in the land of each genre. I started with ambient. And then I made my way down to samba and bossa nova. That was my gateway drug into Brazilian music. Brazilian jazz just has this unique way about it. It's confident, different, and not afraid to go places sonically that are unusual to the ear. Anyway, I spent hours listening to Brazilian music, so much that my goal of getting all the way through the list of genres went out the window, especially when I happened upon the music of Ivan Lins. What I first noticed about Ivan was his jazz sensibility, which was unlike anything I'd ever heard, and his chord changes. One of the tests for me when I listen to a new musician is whether they sound like anything I've heard before. I had never heard anything like this. When I listen to music, I care more about the emotions and the chords than I do the melody or the lyrics. I don't know too many people who listen to music in this way, but I would argue that Lins' music has the greatest chord progressions of any musician who has ever lived. But I won't talk too much about his music because I can't share it on this podcast. Instead, I want to talk about his style and his approach to creativity, because his approach is the same that I've taken with my writing. I opened the episode with a clip from an interview with Lins in 2011. He talks about starting off imitating black singers and trying to mix modern samba with it. What resulted was something entirely different and unique. I've listened to every single one of his albums over and over again, and while I confess that I could never quite learn to play his music well, I learned some important creative lessons. First, with every new project, I try to imitate something that I've seen and mix it with my own storytelling sensibility. Lins also does something else important that I've learned to live by. He takes substantial risks with every new album. In fact, I would say that he reinvents himself with every new album. No two Ivan Lins albums sound anything alike, yet his voice ties them all together. I'm drawn to artists who produce diverse portfolios. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't like being tied to anything. I like having the freedom to reinvent myself. I like that mind-expanding feeling that I get whenever I'm venturing into new territory where I've never been before. I feel that makes me a better artist. It gives me staying power. And lastly, Lins is himself. Honestly, if you listen to his songs, it's amazing that someone with his style is as famous as he is internationally. Most artists like him would have hit dead ends in their careers. But he persists because his music is relevant. His sound is unique. There's no one else like him, and he continues to redefine what music means to him. There's something to be said about being yourself in today's world. There's so much pressure for authors to fit themselves into a box. If you don't fit into the urban fantasy box, or the lit RPG box, or the paranormal romance box, then your books won't sell. At least that's what people think anyway. And so authors listen to that advice, and they compromise their work in order to make money. And that road is fraught with perils. An artist like Yvonne Leans proves that you can be yourself and still find an audience. An artist like Yvonne Leans writes music that will stand the test of time, that jazz listeners will be talking about 100 years from now, all because he dared to be different. That's a creative lifestyle to live by. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed the show, here are a couple ways to help a brother out. If you're listening to this on Anchor, favorite the show. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, do me a favor and write me a review and share it with your friends. You can, of course, visit my website and learn more about my work at michaellaron.com. If you have a question, send me a voice message on Anchor and you just might hear it on the show. Next week, I'll be reading a page from my writer's sketchbook. Until then, I leave you with a quote. Music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy. Ludwig van Beethoven.